Okay, hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. So for today's session, we are going to be talking about this week's breaking news and setups. Um, okay, I can still see some of you guys coming in, so I'll give maybe about 30 more seconds before we get started. But in the meantime, you can let me know in the chat if you guys can see me and hear me and can see my screen. Feel free to also let me know if you guys have any requests for charts that you'd like me to go through. And yeah, we'll start in maybe about 20 more seconds. Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So as per usual, a disclaimer and a risk warning. This information is not considered investment advice or recommendation, but instead a marketing communication. Our products are traded on margin and carry a high level of risk, and it is possible to lose all your capital. These products may not be suitable for everyone, and you should ensure that you understand the risk involved. I'm Melanie, and I'll be your speaker for today. I'm an investment analyst at Rocket, who were finalists for Best FX and Equity Research in the years 2019 to 2021. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the economic events for this week. Okay. I'm using Forex Factory, but you can use any economic calendar that you prefer. Let's take a look at this week's events first. Okay, so for this week, starting off on Monday, we had US Fed Chair Powell speaking, as well as Europe ECB President Lagarde speaking. So on Tuesday, US core durable goods orders were released, and CB consumer confidence, which came out to be higher than forecasted, at 98.0. Durable goods orders fell by 6.3% last month, so in April, and this indicates potential softness in manufacturing. This consumer confidence that we talked about earlier surpasses expectations as we mentioned earlier. Okay, and then for Wednesday, SMB chairman spoke for Switzerland, and then Australia's CPI data was released. This is inflationary data, and you can see it came out to be slightly higher than forecasted at 2.4%. We also have New Zealand's official cash rate, which remained the same at 3.25. And then on Thursday, today we are waiting for the FOMC meeting minutes. RBNZ Gov will be speaking as well. And then we have US preliminary GDP, unemployment claims, GDP price index, as well as pending home sales. On Friday, we have BOE Gov Bailey speaking. Tokyo's core CPI data, retail sales in Australia, Europe zone German preliminary CPI, Spanish flash CPI, Canada's GDP, and US core PC price index, and revised UOM consumer sentiment. Okay, now let's pull out some charts. Then we can get started with our analysis. Okay, let's start with DXY. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, I'm going to switch my camera off, okay, so that you guys can see the entire screen. Okay, so for the next week, we will be awaiting the upcoming inflation as well as employment data for the US. So this will influence the direction of prices for our DXY. Okay, so looking at our weekly time frame right now, you can see the direction is pretty bearish on our daily time frame as well. Although there have been some slight reversals or slight bounces off certain um, support or resistance levels, but overall the trend is still pretty bearish, like we see here. Okay, so looking at our daily time frame, my first support will go here, and first resistance up there. I will maybe place a pivot right about here. Okay, and this is for our daily time frame. For those of you guys who want to look at this time frame. Okay, the 38.2 is quite close to the first resistance, so we'll keep that as well. Okay, now let's look at our 4-hour time frame because some of you have mentioned that you prefer to analyze on the 4-hour time frame instead. So we're gonna do that. So on our 4-hour time frame, you can see it's fluctuating quite a bit. So I'll go with a first or like a pivot over here first. Reason being, we have a bunch of swing highs and swing lows in that area. And then for my first resistance up here at this overlap level. Overlap simply means that there are swing lows and swing highs that respect that area. Okay, and then for my first support, I'll just place it right about here because it's in line with a bunch of swing lows. Okay, so you can pull out your pivot points as well, just to kind of get confirmation on um the resistance and support levels that you've chosen. So how I like to use pivot points is simply by looking at the confluence. So if you see many um of these resistance or support levels lining up in that same area, um, then that supports your resistance and support that you selected. So for example, this region where I've selected the first resistance. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. Right, you can see there are a whole bunch of resistance levels that line up here. Whereas if I were to place a resistance area, maybe somewhere here, in between, you can see there aren't that many levels that line up. Even if I extend it out, there's maybe only one that lines up here. Okay. Similarly for our first support, you can see a bunch of pivot points, support levels that line up together. Okay. Um, yeah, so I'll actually be moving my pivot up here as well. Okay. And with more levels. Yeah. Just wanted to point that out because we often get a lot of questions on how to use pivot points, or if we use it, how do we use it? Okay. So the next step is to look at our Fibonacci levels. So I'm starting with a Fibonacci retracement, and you can see my 61.8 lines up nicely here. And my projection, 100% also lines up there. Okay, hi everyone. I'm so sorry about that. My laptop just shut down for a while. Let me reopen my charts, and then we can continue where we left off. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, should be fine. Okay, where did we leave off? Okay, we were talking about the projections and the retracements. So these are the retracements and projections that we've done so far. Let me just really quickly draw out the projections shape that we're looking at here. Okay, so the for DXY, or rather for projection, we are looking for this kind of a zigzag shape or like a lightning bolt shape here. Okay, something like that. Okay, and then for the retracement, I think we have another 61.8 over there in line with our pivot. Okay, I think that's all the levels we have here. Yeah, I might actually just place the first support below. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is go in with an inverse Nike tick or Fibonacci extension. And then you can see the 127 lines up with alpha support. Okay. Okay, so I'm expecting prices to continue moving towards our pivot over here. But we might see prices reverse after that. I think I have another projection here. Okay, my 78.6 lines up nicely. So you can see here at the pivot level that we have prices lining up. Or rather, we have two Fibonacci levels that line up in this area. Okay, so chances are prices will likely be attracted to this area, but it might not be strong enough to continue pushing towards that first resistance. And if we remember, can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, I wasn't too sure because the microphone wasn't giving me any signal. Okay, anyway. Um, yes, as I was saying, if you remember when we were looking at our daily as well as our weekly time frames, the overall direction of trend is pretty bearish. So we're expecting prices to generally continue in that bearish trend. Okay, but before we make any decisions, let's pull out a couple of indicators and see if they support my analysis. So with Ichimoku, prices are currently moving within the cloud, which suggests that prices are currently in a transitionary stage. So we can't really use this right now. So I'll KIV that. If you look at MACD, it looks pretty bullish right now, so that doesn't support our analysis as well. Let's maybe take a look at our Bollinger Bands. Okay, so you can see Bollinger Bands have started. They did push above, if you see here, it pushed above the upper band slightly, but it currently has reversed. So it went up above it and then it's now reversing back down. Okay, so this does support our analysis, so I'll keep the Bollinger Bands. Let's also take a look at the moving averages. So the EMA, SMA, SA. Okay, and then right now prices are still moving above all three of those indicators. So it also is giving us a bullish signal. So I will remove that. And let's look at our RSI and stochastic. Okay. Um Well, RSI isn't really telling us much right now. It's kind of just below the oversold region. That's not really telling us much, so I'm gonna move that. If we look at stochastic, it has recently dipped below the oversold, or rather the overbought regions, and it looks like prices are going to be continuing down. Reason being, we also have this hidden resistance level here, okay, whereby if you track the peaks for price as well as the stochastic, right, you can actually, and here as well, right, prices actually made a lower low here, and oh, here as well, it actually made a higher low here, okay? I mean a higher, yeah, higher high, whereas on our stochastic, it's giving us a hidden resistance. Okay, so we're expecting prices to continue downwards here. Okay, so this does support our analysis. So just to recap, we are expecting prices to maybe continue upwards towards this pivot level with the confluence area, but it might not be strong enough, price might not be strong enough to continue pushing above the pivot. So I'm expecting it to continue upwards and then reverse off the pivot towards our first support. Okay, any questions so far? I want to switch my camera off because I'm worried that my computer's, I mean the Zoom is going to crash again. Um, but yeah, let me know if there are any issues with that. Okay. Okay, so next, let's take a look at gold. And if you guys have any other requests, feel free to let me know in the chat. Okay, we'll now be moving on to gold. So gold, typically, not always, but quite often we see that it has a um inverse relationship with DXY. Reason being that gold is often bought in DXY. So if DXY drops, it makes it easy. I mean, it makes it cheaper to buy gold and demand for it goes up. Um, yeah, but there are times where this doesn't play out, especially during geopolitical events. Um, yeah. So if we look at our weekly time frame, we can see prices generally moving upwards. On our daily time frame, it's kind of fluctuating right now. But recently it looks like it's dropping. Now with our 4-hour time frame, we also see prices generally falling. Okay, so I'm gonna start by placing a first support here. First resistance up here. And I'll very quickly go in with a resistance, a retracement to line up with that first resistance. So the 78.6 lines up nicely. Okay, I might actually place the first support as my, yeah, this can be your buy entry, but I'll maybe label it as a pivot instead. Okay, so it's entirely up to you what you choose to label that as. Um, Yeah, we're just trying to help you to highlight important levels to take note of. Okay. So our first support, and then I'm gonna go in with another projection here. Okay, my 78.6 lines up nicely with that first support. I might actually go in with another Nike tick here. Okay, you can see that 127 lines up with our first support. Okay, if you can't see it, let me just really quickly draw it out. So it's an inverted Nike tick here. So obviously if it's upright, it'll look like that. In this case, we have inverted, so it's like that. Okay, and then I'm going in with a retracement again to see if we have any levels that line up with our pivot. And here the 50% lines up nicely. Okay, lastly, I'm going to take another retracement from this huge move upwards. So the 61.8 lines up nicely with that first support. Okay, so here I'm expecting prices to reverse. Oops. To maybe reverse off towards our first resistance. Okay, mm, we don't really have a trend line here. Okay, but let's pull out some indicators and see what they tell us. So starting off again with Ichimoku and MACD. MACD is giving us a pretty bearish signal. Ichimoku is giving us, okay, it's moving within the cloud, so it's giving us a bit of a transitionary signal here, so I can't use that. Next, let's look at Bollinger Bands. Okay, prices are moving below the cloud, but they recently reversed upwards, if you can see that. Okay, so I'll keep the Bollinger Bands. Let's also look at, so what I'm looking for in these indicators is I'm looking for a reversal signal. So when it comes to Ichimoku MACD, these are more trend-based signals, so they likely will tell you whether prices are going to be moving up or down, and then which don't really help right now with what I'm looking for. Okay, when you're looking for reversal strategies, we are looking more at divergences when we use RSI and stochastic. Yeah, even the EMA, SMA, and SARS, even though I will look at it just to get an idea of the overall trend or if there's any signs or signals that the trend is changing, but ultimately, these will not tell us. These are kind of lagging indicators as well, so they won't really tell us of potential reversals coming up. Okay. Okay, so EMA, SMA, SAW, you can see prices moving below all three of those indicators, so they don't really tell us much right now. Especially because we haven't quite seen this trend reverse yet, or prices reverse yet. So that will not be reflected in your indicators, especially if they are lagging indicators. Okay, now if we look at the RSI and stochastic, you can see stochastic, we have a hidden support level here. So this is a reversal, right? And then you also kind of see, let me zoom in. You're also able to see prices recently rebounding off this support level. on on the stochastic. Okay, it's bouncing off and it's moving upwards. So we are predicting prices to also continue upwards. Stochastic, I mean, RSI is not really telling us much right now. You can see, yeah, not really saying much. Okay. So that is for gold. So I'm expecting prices to continue. Oh, you can kind of see that reversal already. Reversal off of the pivot here. Oops. Okay, so I'm expecting prices to continue moving upwards towards that first resistance. Okay, any questions before we move on to our next chart? Okay, if there are no questions, let's move on. That was a request for WTI as well as Euro. So we'll start with WTI here. Okay, so there are a couple of, how do I say, there are a couple of global factors, I guess, or current situational factors that are impacting oil prices or WTI in this case. Right, so on our weekly time frame, we see prices generally moving downwards. Okay, we have prices moving in this downtrend here, this descending trend line. In fact, actually, we might see it. It could be a descending trend channel here. Okay, even though quite recently there was a slight rebound from this low here. This was in April, I think, or start of May. Okay, there was a slight rebound, um, but it's still facing a resistance about the $66 level, around here, somewhere around here. Okay. Some reasons for this on the short term, I mean, obviously there are geopolitical tensions around sanctions on Russian crude oil, and there's potentially new sanctions that are being added as well, so that obviously will contribute to your market volatility. There are US trade tariffs. They have implications on global demand as well, and are also impacting our oil prices. Um, yeah, just to name a couple of reasons. So yeah, so it's important to monitor those as well. I'm just briefly mentioning it here, because for now, for these sessions, we just focus on the technicals. But I want to just mention that it's quite important for you to follow the fundamental side. Okay, especially if you are trading these quite volatile indexes. Okay, so on our daily time frame, my first resistance will be up there if you are looking at daily time frame. If not, um, just give me a second. And then my first support will be here. Okay, and then I'll place maybe a retracement over here. My first resistance lines up. Okay, with that 38.2 and also these overlap levels. Okay. Now let's look at a 4-hour time frame. So you can see prices fluctuating quite a bit. There isn't really a very clear trend here. Okay, so for my first resistance, I'll place it here. Second resistance, I want to place it here at this overlap. And then for my first support, here at this multiple swing low. Yeah, I think that's about it. So same thing, going in with my Fibonacci levels. My 61.8 lines up with the second resistance. Going in with a projection. Okay, 61.8 lines up. Um, yeah, I think that's all the levels we have here. We might have a retracement here. 50% lines up with my first support. Okay, so that's about it. Because there is no clear trend right now, if you just look at the chart, it looks quite bullish. Okay, like recently prices have been moving upwards despite this reversal here. So let's pull out some indicators. So I'm going in with Ichimoku and MACD to start and Bollinger Bands. So Ichimoku, you can see prices are they've recently moved above the cloud. So it's giving us a bullish signal. MACD is giving us a bullish signal as well. Bollinger Bands, they've recently passed or like moved over, pushed through the upper band. So that also supports our analysis. Okay, EMA, SMA, SR. You can see prices pushing above all those three indicators here. So once again, that also supports our analysis. Let's look at RSI and stochastic. And you see prices generally moving upwards as well on our RSI. Stochastic. Stochastic, just to point out, it is moving above that upper band. Okay, so there is a potential for prices to reverse slightly, but I don't think that I don't think that it will push below or push all the way towards our first support. Okay, we may see some resistance here, but I think it will still push upwards. Okay, but just be aware of that. So just to reiterate again, we might see prices reverse slightly, but I think overall it will still continue to push upwards, at least slightly towards that second resistance. Particularly because you can see our second resistance is quite a big area. Okay, we have multiple swing lows and swing highs lining up. We also have Fibonacci levels lining up here. So with confluence areas, which is where two or more Fibonacci levels line up, prices tend to be attracted to these areas but may not be able to push past them. Okay, so here what you can do is you can wait for prices to move above the first resistance before you go in for a buy, just to be extra safe, or you can add an intermediate resistance level here. And this can act as your partial profit. So even if prices rebound off of this intermediate resistance, here you still have gained some profits over here. Okay, so it's entirely up to you what you choose to do from these levels that we've highlighted. Great. Any questions? Okay. If not, let's look at EU now. I'm assuming you want to look at euro dollar here. Okay. Let's look at euro dollar. So, okay. So on a weekly time frame, you can see prices recently uh, have rebounded off of this swing high here. Okay. And depending, or rather in the upcoming week, we are going to see the Euro PMI data as well as the ECB's policy stance. So a dovish ECB could weaken the euro further, while stronger economic indicators might provide it support. So that's for the upcoming week. Okay, just to give some context before we look at the technical side. So let's look at our daily time frame now. Okay, but having said that, markets have expected rates to continue, so there may not be as much volatility, but we'll see. Okay, so on our daily time frame, prices are recently have been dropping. Okay, if I were to do my analysis on the daily time frame, my first resistance will be up here and first support down here. So this is in line with a swing low and swing high again. Okay, and I might just place the pivot over here. okay, which is exactly where prices are at. Okay, and then you can go in with your Fibonacci levels after that. So um, there'll be a retracement here, 38.2. Um, you can go in with a projection here. Okay, 61.8 lines up nicely. So just to draw out the shape that we're looking for again, it's this lightning bolt kind of shape. Okay. Okay, now let's look at our 4-hour time frame. So here it looks like prices are continuing to drop, but at the pivot we might see a bit of a reversal there. Okay, and you can see that's exactly when we zoom in, that's exactly what we see here. There is a reversal on the pivot. So zooming in, we can sometimes you can just reuse the support and resistance levels that you've identified for the higher time frames. So that's why we typically like to work from a top-down approach here. So I'm going in firstly with a retracement. My 61.8 lines up nicely with that pivot. Okay, and also I'm going to add an intermediate resistance here. Okay, and you can see exactly how many times prices have tested this level. There are a bunch of swing lows here, swing high, and swing low here. So we again might see a bit of resistance here, where I've highlighted. Okay, um, but it doesn't seem like there are any Fibonacci levels here. Oh wait, we might have a retracement here in line with that intermediate level. Okay, my 38.2. Okay, so we might see a bit of resistance here. Okay, um, I'm gonna zoom out and see if we have any other Fibonacci levels. We have another retracement here, I think, in line with that first support. Yep, the 61.8. Okay, I think that's about it. Okay, now let's pull out our indicators again. Ichimoku, MACD, Bollinger Bands. Okay, prices are moving within the cloud, so it's transitionary. I'm not gonna use that now. MACD is giving us a bearish signal currently. Um, okay. Bollinger Bands, you can see, are pushing below the lower band. However, they've already reversed upwards. So I'm not going to use it. I'm going to KIV this, okay? Because it's not really giving us a very clear signal right now. Let's look at our EMA, SMA, and SA. Prices are still moving below the EMA and SMA, or moving averages, but you can see it's quite close. So it looks like it could move above it any moment. So I'm gonna KIV that as well. SA will simply remove because it doesn't support our analysis. Oh wait, actually? Oh wait. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Okay. Next, looking at RSI and stochastic. Um, RSI isn't telling us much, other than there has recently been a short rebound, but that doesn't give us much information. Stochastic, you can see that prices recently rebounded off of this hidden support level here. Okay, so that supports our analysis that prices might continue to push upwards. Reason being, let me just highlight, if you're still unfamiliar with hidden resistance and divergences, you can see here where I've highlighted prices started moving upwards when our stochastic bounced off of this hidden support. Actually here as well. Okay, so that's the reason why now that prices are bouncing off of our first support again here, we are expecting that to happen on our pivot as well for price. Okay. Any questions? Of course, you do want to make sure that you're careful of this confluence area here. So you can, once again, just to give you some options, you can wait for prices to push above the confluence area before going in for a buy, or you can use this level that I'm highlighting now. You can use this as an intermediate resistance. Do a partial profit here. Yeah, it's up to you. So the reason why I'm placing the partial profit there or a intermediate level here is because it's in line with a couple of swing highs as well. Okay. So just giving you guys more options. Okay, are there any last minute questions? Sure, we can okay, we'll very quickly look at dollar yen. Okay, weekly time frame, prices are moving downwards. Daily time frame, there has been a recent uptick. For hours time frame, it's moving downwards. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do this quite quickly, because we're running out of time. But I'll place my pivot up there. First resistance will just be at the swing high, and then my first support over here. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going in with my Fibonacci levels. Um, the 50% is quite close to the first resistance, so I'll keep that. So it doesn't have to line up exactly, just as long as it's quite close to it, that's fine. Oops. Oops. Oh, okay. Okay, anyway. Um, my 61.8 projection lines up. I'm going in with another retracement here for the pivot, so 61.8 lines up. I'm going in with another retracement for the first resistance. Okay, 78.6. I think that's all the levels we have. Okay, we might have another retracement here for the first support. Okay, so the 61.8 lines up. Okay, here I'm expecting prices to continue downwards actually. Yeah, because the overall trend has been pretty bearish. If I zoom out, you can see. So I'm expecting it to continue in this downtrend. But let's look at our indicators once again. Ichimoku, MACD, Bollinger Bands, EMA, SMA, SAR. Prices moving within the cloud, so it's not telling us much. EMA, SMA, prices still moving above it. However, it does look like it's going to cross below it soon. So I will KIV those. Yeah, MACD is not supporting our analysis as well. Let's look at Bollinger Bands and our RSI and stochastic. Okay, you can see that reversal as well. So today we've been seeing a lot of reversals, a lot of crisis like pushing upwards or pushing out of the Bollinger Band, but then showing us a reversal, which is a signal that prices might continue to reverse in the other direction. Similarly, on the RSI as well as stochastic, we are also seeing price reversals here. Stochastic, you can see this resistance. Actually on our RSI, okay, not really, but you can definitely see prices moving downwards. Stochastic, you can see there is a hidden resistance level here. Okay, so previously when when stochastic reversed off this first resistance, we saw prices hit steadily downwards. Similarly, right now, we are expecting that will happen again. Okay. Okay, I hope that's clear. That's all the time we have for today. Again, I'm so sorry about the technical issues earlier. I don't know why this keeps happening, but I think if I switch my camera off, it helps a bit. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you guys found this session helpful. Have a great weekend, and I will see you guys again next week. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks, guys. Bye.